I'm sexy, I've got the look that drives the girls wild. I got the moves that really move them. I send chills up and down their spines. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I make them hot, I make them shiver. Their knees get weak whenever I'm around. They see me walk, they hear me talk. I make them feel like they're on cloud nine. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Eat your heart out, girls. Hands off the merchandise. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Welcome everyone to Late-Night Counter-Apologetics. It is your boy, Pocket Locker, Heartbreak J, the one and only, and as always, I am in airplane mode. Folks, I'm sure you noticed it is a very special day on the stream. We are having ourselves an official birthday bash for an entire generations of unborn babies that have now been saved by the president, the true president of the United States. The man who promised us he would only elect pro-choice, psych, pro-life Supreme Court justices. And he has delivered on that promise, folks. And we are going to get into it with my main man, Jesus. And so today, folks, we are going to learn from the one and only. He is, of course, one of the graduates of the most prestigious, unbelievably astute universities. Of course, I am talking about that Scrooge McDuck Bible University. We are going to be hearing from my main man, John MacArthur, who is going to let us know about the biblical view of abortion, folks. All right, so not the amateurs, okay? Not the wishy-washy stuff. None of that what you feel in your heart and what you're committed to based on values. No. No. Today, we are going to learn what the Bible has to say. So, folks, I hope you've come in that spirit of fellowship. I hope you have arrived, whether you're an atheist, a theist, or agnostic, or indifferent, whether you are watching live now, later, never, or whenever. Whenever works for you, works for me. And folks, I hope you've got your communion ready. As you see, I've got the birthday cup. We are here to celebrate. You see my main man, Jewish Space Laser, with his birthday hat on. He's ready. Can we get a good shot of Jewish Space Laser, please? Look at my man, Jewish Space Laser. He got his birthday hat on. Jewish Space Laser is ready. Of course, the refiner's fire is burning. Folks, I'm so official today. I'm so official today. You know, the ladies are checking it out because they love a man in a robe. All right, folks, calm that down. Calm that down. It is not about me, folks. It is all about celebrating the birthdays of those unborn babies. And I promise you, folks, if you stick around to the end, if you make it all the way through this video that I have no idea how long it's going to be, folks, I promise you one thing. I am going to reveal a take so hot you can't hold it. So hot you just can't handle this take. This take is going to be so on fire. It is going to get us canceled before we even get started, folks. I promise you I am going to lay down the most unfiltered, unadulterated, pure atheist hot take on the issue of abortion that you may have ever heard in your life, folks. I promise you don't want to miss it. That's at the end of the video. Folks, of course, John MacArthur, he wanted to be here in person with us today. You know, I fly around the world, folks. I normally make these things happen, but due to COVID restrictions, folks, I just had to have him send over the audio. Okay, so we don't have video today. You know, we didn't get the camera set up, but it's okay. I said my channel is not interested in what you look like. We are not interested in the stagecraft of the preacher. Okay, we want the meat and potatoes. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to understand your arguments, your passion, your case, whatever you think it is you need to convince us of where you're coming from. So, folks, now listen, some of y'all folks are not now y'all are not in the celebratory mood. Y'all are whining. Y'all are saying, Jason, this is some serious stuff right now. And you are making light of an unprecedented assault on human rights and the dignity of women, okay, and their bodily autonomy. And I'm here to tell you, you're probably absolutely right about those things. But in addition to that, we come in that spirit of fellowship, so we're going to hear people out, and you got to understand that we want to hear these people out. We want to be part of them, and you got to understand for them, this is a big victory. Okay, this is a big thing to celebrate. Some people, I've heard them saying all week that this is the best news they have heard in their entire life. Okay, so we may not all agree about the mood that this news puts us in, these changes that we're going through. Okay, but we have to come in that spirit of fellowship, understand that our brethren on the other side are celebrating. So we came prepared to celebrate too. Okay, we came to celebrate just so that they understand we are not coming as hostile. We are coming. We understand. You got to save the babies. We're here to save the babies. We do a birthday party for the babies. Okay, now let's hear about this biblical view of abortion, folks.
On the issue itself. And so I want to address that, if I may, for a moment. And what I'm going to say to you may sound like an article in the newspaper because it's full of statistics and quotes and
Hope you got your popcorn ready.
It does set the scene for understanding the issue at hand. To sum up what we are experiencing with regard to abortion in America, we could simply say America as a nation is highly committed by law and by practice to a form of mass murder. And that is really the bottom line. This nation, which certainly prides itself on its humanitarianism, is in a murderous cycle of violence that makes the Nazi Holocaust look mild by comparison. Nearly 2 million.
Now, folks, I told you, when you're a graduate of Scrooge McDuck Bible University, you don't play around. You know how to get right to the heart of the matter, okay? This man didn't come out here wasting no time, playing no games. He came right out with, y'all are committed to murder of the babies, the sweet little babies. You want to murder all the babies, okay? And then he came out and said, okay, look, y'all would put Hitler to shame, okay? Okay, even Hitler would be like, damn, I know how to kill people like that. All right, so what do you think he's setting his audience up for? I mean, like, this is the type of talk that's crazy in this country, y'all. Like, you're just telling this whole crowd of people, like, flat up, like straight up, like, off the top. Like, let's get into, hi, how you doing? Good morning. So we're here to talk today about abortion. Yeah, is that my cue? Boom. They're committed to murder of all the children's on a scale to which would make Hitler ashamed.
Indoctrinate children.
Babies are aborted a year in America. Every third baby conceived now is being murdered. Among married women, abortions now exceed births. More babies are killed than are born. Some would tell us that there is an abortion about every 15 seconds in America. In some metropolitan hospitals in the major cities of our nation, abortions far outnumber live births. Planned Parenthood has gone so far as to say this is nothing more than a means of preventing disease. Pregnancy being noted as a disease. If you think that sounds far-fetched, I will remind you of a paper by Dr. Willard Cates.
And this is where they start to lose people, because it's like, really, bro? Like, who that's pro-choice really comes out and says, yes, that pregnancy, yeah, she got struck with the disease of pregnancy. Listen, let me tell you this. If you get pregnant and you feel like it's a disease, you ain't doing it right. You understand? I'm gonna just put it to you straight like that, because if the boy Pocket lays it down, if the boy Pocket gets up in there, you ain't gonna be feeling like you've been diseased. You're gonna feel like you done been blessed. You understand what I'm saying? Blessed. You know what I'm saying? To have such blessed progeny with the gifts. You understand? The progeny gonna have the gifts. You know what I'm saying? You understand? But really though, who really talks about pregnancy as though it's a disease? Like, I don't know.
From the Planned Parenthood Physicians Association, the title of the paper is Abortion as Treatment for Unwanted Pregnancy, the Second Sexually Transmitted Disease. Pregnancy then is seen by Planned Parenthood as a sexually transmitted disease that needs to be cured by abortion. Planned Parenthood has somewhere approaching 1,000 abortion clinics, doing somewhere approaching 75,000 murders a year, and are receiving millions of dollars of support from the U.S. government and United Way and other agencies like that. Our nation and other nations in the world are frankly wiping out an entire generation of human beings in mass infanticide. It is estimated that
well, fear no longer, my friend. The Republican Party is here to save the day. Courtesy of one Donald J. Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the whole gang. Don't you worry about it anymore. These unborn children are going to be born by the mass. We're going to create a whole new generation. But seriously, isn't the world overpopulated like a mug? Like, really? Like, do we really? You really want to have, man?
Perhaps as many as 75 million babies will be murdered this year around the world. 75 million. And that's probably conservative. More than all the deaths in all the wars in all the history of the world. This kind of murder is shocking, and I don't want to be too shocking, but I want to tell you how it's done, and I hope I don't offend anyone. The processes of abortion are somewhat frightening and bizarre. During the first trimester, the methods are dilation and suction, called DNS, or dilation and curettage, called DNC. Basically means a vacuum tears the child in pieces and sucks the pieces out through a tube. Or a sharp instrument dismembers the fetus into sections, and then often forceps are used to crush the head and reduce its size. And this, of course, can result in torn uterus.
Now, what's so interesting about this to me is, like, well, one, the amount of research he had to go through to figure this out, but still, like, apparently never encountered like the halfway decent arguments from the other side, such that you like wouldn't come out and call these people murderers. But anyway, it's so interesting to me that I don't know if I've talked about this on here before, but basically the idea of I always talk about it like a crucifixion porn, like how certain pastors love to like have these sermons where it's like this really drawn out, like spoken word recreation of the entire crucifixion scene, right? And it's basically like Passion of the Christ, but orally, you know what I'm saying? Just verbally. And it's like, you know, they take you through the whole thing. Imagine him carrying this, you know, always going on about the weight. Imagine how heavy these beams were. And then he falls and then he gets whipped. And imagine them nailing the nails into his hands, into his feet, and the amount of blood that he would have lost and how soon you would, right? And it's just to build up the like gore fest of these details, which somehow they never tie to the fact that their whole religion is like Jewish blood magic, where this whole thing is like required for God to like redeem the world and stuff. But skipping over that, this is like very reminiscent of that, right? Where he's figured out that the way to definitely, you know, pull at the heartstrings of his audience is to really elucidate all of the intricate details of this process and portray it as gruesome as possible to really drive home the point that this is murder of the babies. So it'll be interesting to see where he takes this. But man, you can see just imagine somebody who's really under the leadership of this type of thinking your whole life, right? And you can see that they just come right out the gate with the really super harsh rhetoric. Very interesting.
Uterus, perforated uterus, sterility, things like that. During the second trimester, the safe, comfortable home of the child, known as the amniotic sac, is wounded by a needle which withdraws the amniotic fluid and replaces it with a heavy saline solution which basically burns the child alive. And in 24 hours to 72 hours, the body will expel the dead fetus. During the third trimester, a hysterotomy is used, sometimes prostaglandins, a drug producing delivery by stimulating the uterus falsely into labor. These sometimes produce children born alive who are then left to die or even killed. A new way being advocated by the National Abortion Federation in their recent meetings.
All right, so now these like stillborns and then these other babies who are like left, they just like throw that in there, like just real slippery with the language.
Was advocated at a workshop, puncturing the soft spot on the baby's head and then vacuuming out what is in the head. Another abortionist at that meeting suggested that the length of the baby's foot could be measured and used to determine the price of the abortion. It almost sounds primitive, certainly not characteristic of a culture sophisticated as ours is. Even cesarean sections are performed as abortions in the third trimester. I remember reading about a case in New York City where twin babies were conceived in the womb, thriving. Both of them had Down syndrome, and they were killed by puncturing their hearts directly. Hundreds of these attempted abortions in the third trimester are born alive and then used in some kind of experimentation. The IRS, jumping into the fray, as they always want to do in order to sort of rule on how this all affects our taxes, has ruled in revised Rule 73
All right, y'all, we're about 5 or 6 minutes in, and you can see that we laid out the emotion up front. It's just interesting that he didn't go to the Bible up front, right?
something that parents are entitled to a tax exemption if, after an attempted abortion, their child lives for any length of time. Now, you tell me how a child attempted to be aborted can be considered a dependent child if it lives, but not a child if it dies. What kind of a dilemma is that? I suppose it's the same dilemma that the Van Nuys police had not long ago when a woman in Van Nuys had a baby in a bathroom and she killed it with a razor blade. Had she killed the baby before it was born, she would have had no problems. Because she killed it with a razor blade after it was born, she is serving an 11-year prison sentence. This is the stupidity of humanism. 15-year-olds can get abortions without parental knowledge or consent. In fact,
all right, so it's just funny to me because like people sometimes hit me like, yo, Jay, why do you get into politics so much? Like, it's a really funny thing, especially to address on this channel, right? Why do you always let your talk of religion slide on into the politics? And I'm telling people, and you know what I really think it is? I'm gonna be honest with you. I think it's that a lot of the people I'm in communities with are in silos, and they're still siloed based on their beliefs. So my theist friends, when they talk about atheists, it's very clear they don't know many atheists. And when my atheist friends sometimes talk about religion, it's very clear they don't necessarily have a lot of links to people who are just still practicing faith, or that they themselves have like lost a little bit of touch with that. Because if you, and that's part of the reason it's good that we're doing this, right? Because it actually allows us to sort of go into the church and hear the sermons and be there, where it's like we're not expected to be there, and we can hear how they talk amongst themselves. But you can see how deep the political stuff is, right? Right off the top, they're murderers. They're worse than Hitler. Now, all the statistics, then breaking down the government, right? And the government's role in it, and talking about that commitment. Now, he didn't turn around and talk about all the ways the government seems to be ass backwards and committed to bending over backwards for conservative Christianity. Like, nah, let's not get into that, right? Because that doesn't fit the Christian persecution narrative. So instead, it's like, oh, woe is us. The government is actually committed to humanism. Like, right? He says, like, this is the downfall of is the downside of humanism. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like, if you really, really listen to what they're saying, the politics is right there. It's up front. And this is how they do it, to me, with so many things. And that's why I said I start talking about it, because, to be honest, that's part of what motivated me, was the fact that the way the theology is practiced, at least in America, when you deal with a lot of the evangelicals especially, it's incredibly tied to their politics. And now I think certainly with this particular issue, people see that. But the truth is, it's really happening across the board with all of their issues. And so, we're going to talk about it in this context, but I really hope people start to think about it in all the other contexts. So it is what it is.
generally, the law wants to say that parents are the enemy of the freedom of the child. In fact, even the consent of the spouse is unconstitutional. Dead fetuses are used in an industry of business and experimentation. The Journal of Clinical Pathology indicates that fetal organs have been grafted into mice and rats to see how long they live, and frightening experiments that I won't even speak about in a public meeting. Squibb Company is involved in paying tens of thousands of dollars to doctors to experiment with fetuses for use in research on high blood pressure drugs. And this is all coming fairly rapidly. I saw something about it the other night on television. The U.S. government funded experiments on live aborted babies. Some are thrown away. Dr. J. Dominguez of New York City wrote, quote, "On any Monday, you can see 70 garbage bags with fetal material in them along the sidewalks of abortion clinics in New York City," end quote. So you're dealing with a very, very widespread problem. It is now possible to do to a retarded infant what would be impossible to do to a dog or cat. In fact, a recent case in California, Kurlander versus Bioscience Labs, makes it possible for children to sue their parents for wrongful life, for letting them live and refusing abortion. This reported in the newsletter of the American College of OB-GYN. In other words, if your parents didn't abort you and you lived and you've got severe problems, you can sue them for letting you live. Bags of babies are found by trash compactors.
Again, y'all, is anybody wondering why? Is it me that's slipping into politics? Remember, this is supposed to be the biblical view by John MacArthur. I ain't heard a word about the Bible yet, But I've heard about the government and the humanism and the socialism and the what you can sue for. And come on now, y'all. Let's wake up, because we are in the middle of a theocratic revolution. Okay? A theocratic revolution. Okay? While you're chilling being an atheist and being rational, okay? Or being apathetic and agnostic. Oh, I don't care. Oh, I don't care. I don't want to talk about politics. My ears are burning. Oh, I just want to do my work. And then I want to hang out with my friends. And I don't want to talk about politics. It's so divisive. Why do you get into that? Why do you get in? Because there's a motherfucking theocracy that's coming to take your rights, nigga. That's why. That's why. Yeah. Because they don't care. They don't care. If they got the majority of the justices, yes, the majority of them niggas in the robes, right? They got a majority of the motherfuckers in the robes, right? They don't care what public opinion is, because they understand politics. They're organized. They're not apathetic. They understand power and how to wield it, and how to stop others from getting it. Y'all need to wake up.
Factors, as we all know. Yet, on the other side of this, a wounded American eagle was found recently in Maryland and rushed to emergency treatment. However, it died, and a $5,000 reward was offered for the arrest of whoever injured it. It's illegal to ship a pregnant lobster. It's a $1,000 fine. In the state of Massachusetts, there's an anti-cruelty law that makes it illegal to award a goldfish as a prize. Why? This is what it says, quote,
"What up, Cameron? I see you."
"Protect the tendency to dull humanitarian feelings and corrupt morals of those who abuse them," end quote. The same people who want to save the goldfish are leading the parade usually to kill the babies. This, of course, has developed into a multi-billion-dollar industry, and in terms of business, many people make their money on this. I talked to an abortionist who was attending our church some years back, and presented to him the gospel, and we had several meetings together. He understood fully the gospel. I don't know his spiritual condition at this time, but I remember on the days that I talked with him, he told me he himself alone did $9 million worth of abortions in a year in his own clinic. That's one doctor.
Again, y'all, I'm going to keep calling attention to it. They haven't said a word about the Bible. We're here for the biblical view of abortion. We haven't heard a word about the Bible. But notice the detail to the numbers. When they went to the FBI, they had numbers. When they went to these case examples, they had numbers. When they went to the size of the industry, they had numbers, and they're breaking it down. They're breaking down the checks and the balances from the pulpit, y'all. From the pulpit, y'all. I'm not offended. I really want people to understand why. Like, I'm seriously not offended. Matter of fact, I see it as an opportunity. Whatever people are not talking about is something I'm happy to talk about. So if people in the atheist, religion type community don't want to talk about politics, cool. But I hope this is a shining example for the people that join my community of why we do it. Because we have to. Because they're coming to take your shit.
The industry goes beyond just the abortion itself to the products of abortion, the material, the fetus material, which is used for all kinds of things and sold. It's a massive industry. This even gets more bizarre, and there's no need to get into it. The whole abortion industry is frightening, mind-boggling, and how a nation of civilized people, if we are civilized, advanced technologically, yes, civilized, no. How we could tolerate this is unthinkable, except for the fallenness and the wretched sinfulness of the human heart. In other countries in the world, people are still reeling from the impact of this. I'll give you one illustration. Japan has been very aggressive in the abortion field for a number of years.
Now notice, y'all, he slipped into the biblical worldview. He didn't quite go to the Bible, right? But where he went to first was, how could we stand for this? There's just murder going on every day, all around you, all the time. There's just murder constantly. Not just murder, y'all. They're murdering the babies. The babies, y'all. Ah! No more birthday parties for the babies. That's why it's a celebration. But look, I'm trying to get you, like, it's, you know, we're playing here, but look, I'm trying to get y'all to understand this seriously. This is a grand occasion for these people. They are over the moon. This is not just their political agenda. It's item number 1 on their political agenda, and they are seeing it as a revelation in their own times. So how could we have stood for it previously? Because it reflects our fallen nature. Do you see that? It's like before you can even have a one-on-one, honest, charitable listening, trying to understand and hear each other out conversation about why someone might even be pro-life versus pro-choice. The pro-life person has been taught to think this person is off the rails. They're down with the baby murdering. And the reason they're down with the baby murdering is the reason they're down with all that other nonsense in their life is because it reflects their fallen nature. They're in sin, right? If they happen to not be religious, then it's like boom, 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 there you go, right? If they're not religious, then boom, you already know that's your evidence that they don't got a relationship with my main man, Jesus. And if they don't have a relationship with Jesus, then they're definitely living in sin, right? So you already know that this person is like, you know, you don't want to say they're evil, but you don't even expect them to do reasonable things.
And in Japan, there is severe trauma on the part of Japanese women because there have been millions and millions of abortions that have occurred there. Over the last, say, 40 years in Japan, there have been in excess of 50 million abortions that are known. The women have been traumatized by these abortions in terms of their own emotional life. And so the Buddhists have erected temples for the express purpose of dealing with the issue of abortion. These are temples which memorialize what are called, quote, water babies. This is the term for an aborted child, a water baby. Those who perish by abortion in order to secure peace for their departed souls. These women come to these places and they are now aware of the fact in their own conscience, at least they assume this to be true, without biblical revelation, that these little aborted water babies have a soul, and so they've got to do something for the departed souls. So the Buddhists in their religion have erected temples where the departed souls of water babies can be attended to by penitent mothers. For somewhere between $340 and $640, a grieving mother can purchase a small stone Buddha. And somehow
it's funny, he went to the Buddhist before
Buddha
he even
not
really
only
got to the
feeds
Christian
the business
scripture.
enterprise, but relieves some of the anxiety and apparently does something for the
He gonna do
departed
the
soul of
Bible
the baby.
for a lightning round.
In one temple alone, tens of thousands of these have been sold. The grounds have become a commercial attraction where visitors pay to come and take pictures of women who are there agonizing over their departed water babies. Priests will offer prayers at that place for water babies at $120 per baby and $40 for each additional baby that you've had aborted. That's just one illustration from one country of the trauma that has occurred in the lives of these women. 400 to 800% is the range of statistic figures that say that regard suicide. Somewhere between 400 and 800% of suicide rates increase in women who have had abortions. Hypochondria, depression, withdrawal.
And of course, y'all know the question I have for him, right? Like, of course, like first off, you know, I'm always a little suspicious of preachers and their stats. But even granting them, right? It's like they give you these stats sometimes with homosexuals and mental health and depression and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, you really think it's associated with the thing, or is it associated with how y'all treat these people? Is it associated with the fact that you sit up here and tell people that they're murdering babies and they're, you know, worse than Hitler because the government is committed to the sins of humanism? You know, might that be the reason people are fucked up after this happens to them? Also, like, let's say that's not even the case. Let's say straight up it's because Abortion is like a terrible thing to do and a terrible thing to experience, and so it totally could ruin a lot of things for you because of just the trauma and the toll that it could take on you. Well, then, do you think maybe we shouldn't try to shame people about it? You think maybe those people that are born and here and alive might need our help and support as they go through something difficult? I heard this one time said about trans kid, somewhere on social media, a trans kid was being celebrated for coming out as trans, and some right winger went off about how kids are gonna come out as trans now just to get attention. You stupid motherfucker! Nobody's coming out as trans to get attention. It might be that as human beings, we recognize that experience, especially given our cultural context, which makes people who are trans have so much undue burden that they have to deal with. And we recognize that. And then they risk it and they take on the vulnerability in their social circle to let people know. And then young people, children, normally cruel as hell. I don't even like children. That's why. Why? Because they're cruel as hell, right? And they're actually supportive. Because even cruel kids who would rather pick on each other and throw stuff at each other recognize that that's a really hard thing for somebody to do. So they big up the person. They show them some love. They show them some support. They let them know everything's going to be okay, that they're happy for them, that they're celebrating them. You know what I'm saying? And now, instead of recognizing that, you're oh, no, this is bad because now kids are going to transition just so they can get attention. You have to be trying so hard to not understand these things. And that's why I think we got to be more direct with these type of people. It's nice to be nice and it's okay to be charitable with people, but at some point, it's yo, if you're going to throw your hat in the ring on this, if you're going to speak out on this, especially publicly, and then you're going to do all this research and all of this work so you can be taken seriously as somebody who really has something to say about this, well, then shouldn't we be able to hold you accountable for knowing, the whole picture? Why do I have to pretend that you're making good arguments when you're not? Why do I have to pretend that you've gone out of your way and you're really working hard to bring some nuance to something and you're clearly just shaming people, adding nothing?
Guilt, shame, drug, alcohol dependency, serious emotional trauma, all of these come from abortion. 6 to 7 times more women die each year also from legal than illegal abortions. So the whole thing is a very, very frightening scenario. Just a few more things, and I'm not going to give you all the documentation, although I have it in hand, but let me just read you some of the things that are coming out of this abortion issue with regard to how it impacts women. The risk of pregnancy outside the womb, which threatens the mother's life, is doubled for women who have had one abortion and quadrupled where there have been 2 or more. Miscarriages are almost twice as common for women who have aborted. A study of 26,000 births indicated a more than 3-fold increase in the number of stillborn babies and deaths of newborns among mothers who'd had an abortion. Since about 2 or 3 women per 100 need a blood transfusion, there is an increased risk of exposure to hepatitis and AIDS. Bleeding is more common in subsequent wanted pregnancies. Many researchers have observed subsequent premature births and low birth weights. Among women who have had abortions, there is an increased risk of damage to the cervix, a 7-fold increase in placenta previa. That's where the placenta covers the birth canal and often requires a cesarean section. About twice the risk of breast cancer when abortions were performed in the first trimester before completing a full-term pregnancy. That's because God, in part, has designed the body to begin to prepare itself for the birth of that child. When that is aborted, it creates certain risk factors in the body as the body retreats to try to compensate. There is up to 30% greater risk of pelvic infection. The statistics, however, are probably even grimmer.
It's so funny because, like, I'm really, really listening to him and he's laying out all this stuff. And I'm not even going to lie. He's making me think about issues related to abortion. I had no idea. Like, honestly, like, I want this to really be like just laid back, really informal. So I don't really listen to these things at all. I kind of pick something and go with it and hope for the best. So I really have no idea what the person's going to say. And it's funny, like, he has made me really, really, really think about this issue so much deeper. But everything he says is just the reason why Christians should be working to take care of these people. Like, y'all should be running Planned Parenthood. Y'all should be like, yeah, in the name of Jesus, we need to make sure that all the women who find themselves in this unfortunate circumstances have the best of everything. The best medical care, the best social services. And I ain't even gonna get started because I got some to say.
Since a woman who is injured will rarely go back to the doctor or facility where it occurred, furthermore, complications often develop later and are not reported in connection with the abortion that caused them, nor is death always linked to abortion in reports and in death certificates. And then when you look at the emotional effect, as I noted about the women in Japan, you find all kinds of interesting things. Women having prior emotional or mental problems often become worse, and having an abortion produces such problems in women who previously had none. Women who've had an abortion are more likely to experience guilt, depression, and be suicidal. However, the claim that a woman will commit suicide if she is denied an abortion, and that's what the liberationists tell us, is highly unlikely because suicide is almost non-existent among pregnant women. Over a 20-year period, 13,500 Swedish women were refused abortions. Only 3 committed suicide. Very, very rare. Also, after an abortion, a woman is far more likely to break up with her partner whether she is married or not. Abortion just destroys everybody in the process. The question then comes, how did this ever get started? Whoever started this? Well, sad to say, it goes way back. I mean, if we want to know where it all started, we have to see that it started certainly in the mind of Satan. According to John 8:44, he is a murderer. Certainly it started from the same kind of fallen attitude that made Cain kill Abel. Cain was a murderer. That's the expression of fallenness. You can go way back and you will find that there have been efforts on the part of Satan to murder babies in the time of Moses and in the time of Jesus, and he was successful, as you know.
I was going to put this in the chat, but what if we found a new scripture, right? And in it, Jesus shows love and support to a woman who is known to have an abortion. And I'm talking about a new, authentic scripture. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you something about the scriptures. Why do the scriptures never really have that story where all of the apostles all have their like unique one-on-one stories? Like that's a little weird to me. But what if there was a new one, right? And it was just like independently verified by a couple of them. And it was like, oh yeah, we all remember that time when Jesus stuck up for that woman that had an abortion. What if the woman at the well, what if we found out proof that the woman who had the abortion, where Jesus writes on the ground and says, let he who's out then cast the first stone. What if we find an earlier version of that scripture that specifies that not only was she an adulterer, but that she had an abortion to cover up for the adultery. And then Jesus had said that. What would happen then? Just a question.
In the time of Jesus, in massacring babies under the age of 2 in order to try to eliminate the Messiah. Looking around, for example, say the ancient time of Judaism, you can find abortions practiced among pagans, but never among Jews for obvious reasons. They knew that life was sacred, life was granted by God, and they used to camp on the second great commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. And since a baby conceived was a person, that became their neighbor, and therefore to harm their neighbor would be to violate the second commandment. Coming into the New Testament time, there were also pagans who engaged in abortion, but again, Jews did not do it in the New Testament time, nor did the church. Plato and Aristotle both recommended family growth limitation through abortion. Abortion was used even in New Testament times among pagans to conceal illicit sex. If you could remove the evidence, you could remove the stigma of illicit sex. Rich women also didn't want to leave their wealth to lower class children fathered illegitimately. So while they might have wanted to have an affair with some low class man, they didn't want to support his child, and so abortion was a way to deal with that. And then abortion was a way to preserve, they said, their sex appeal, not to, quote, trouble the womb with bouncing babies, end quote. Abortion was also a form of contraception. In times of ancient cultures, even around the New Testament era, the methods used varied from substances introduced into the womb through the birth canal, sometimes oral drugs.
Again, really just sounds like really not trying, again, because it's like you're seeing how ubiquitous this is throughout human history. So like that, and which to me is which is always why to me it was like a no-go on the whole pro-life thing. Because if you just look at it, it's just very clear that abortive behavior is ubiquitous throughout the animal kingdom. And so you just recognize that it's literally part of it's just a part of how a lot of mating systems, including the human mating system, work. It's ugly and unfortunate, but there's reasons for it, and he's laying out a lot of them. Yeah, which is why it's so important for them to really rest on that commitment to the whole murder thing.
Drugs, or poisons as they used to be called. Sometimes mixtures that were mixed for the purpose of proving fatal to the unborn infant. Sometimes they would bind the body in these very, very tight ropes or cloths to literally squeeze the womb and crush the life of the child. Sometimes they would locate the baby in the womb and take a hard object and smash against that infant in the womb and kill it that way. Sometimes using blades and sometimes hooks going up through the birth canal. Pagans would do this. The Jews always rejected it because life was created by God, and anyone created by God became your neighbor, and to take a life was to violate the second commandment. The early church then took a strong stand against it. In the Didache, which is a codification of early church teaching, it says, "Thou shalt not murder a child by abortion." Abortion was rejected in another early document called the Epistle of Barnabas as contrary to neighbor-centered love. So you can see the early church picked up on some of the Jewish ideas. The Didache, again, that same codification of teaching, saw the way of death as full of cursing, murders, adulteries, and murders of children. They saw the way of death as belonging to those who killed children. They called them corrupters of God's creatures. And in the 3rd century, a Latin word even emerged, the word abortuantes, abortionists. Abortion, they said, brought the judgment of God. The Reformation didn't change this. The church has always seen abortion as murder, an act of violence, and a lack of love toward one God has created. So it isn't new. The people of God, Israel, stood against it. The church has stood against it, and we must stand against it. Here we are living in a time when this abortion movement has become a massive industry, has become a reflection of our culture. And if you look back a little bit, you can see what the pieces were that sort of came together to build the platform on which this whole thing stands. Let me just see if I can't share some of them with you. This whole commitment to abortion started. Step 1 was the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution, which basically said, we want to be free to express ourselves sexually. You go back to the early 60s, everybody's got to be engaged in free love. Remember the expression free love? You remember all the hippies and that whole thing. The sexual revolution spawned abortion as an industry.
Shout out to all the hippies out there. All right, so very interesting, folks. We are officially 20 minutes into this sermon about the biblical view on abortion, and we've heard next to nothing about the Bible itself. We've heard about biblical times and biblical culture and the downsides of humanism and more mass murders than Hitler, you know, on and on and on, but we're yet to get to the Bible portion of this. And it's very interesting how I'm not even so sure that that's necessarily a quote unquote problem, right? Because you got to remember the context under which this sermon was likely delivered, which is to an audience of believers who in their head already know, quote unquote, the biblical view, right? You can really see that, at least so far, this is very little about exegesis of the biblical view and the scriptures themselves, and more about reinforcing the emotional, social, and yes, political implications of the biblical commitment, with the understanding that the people in the audience understand what the biblical view is. They already know. Like you said, the church has always been against, right? So, you know, by way of the church has always been against, it's almost like you know exactly what the insinuation is of what exactly the biblical worldview is supposed to be to the believers in the audience.
Because it basically said we have to be free to express ourselves sexually, and we don't really need to be dealing with the consequences. In fact, they would go so far as to say,
and I'm gonna hold up on this sexual revolution thing, because it's like the church is so controlling about sex, but I really have a question for a lot of Christians. You know, we come here in the name of fellowship, spirit of fellowship, so we want to, you know, be able to question anybody. And it's like, if you're a theist, ask yourself this question. I just want to know, if it wasn't for your commitment that you believe your faith tells you these sexual acts have to be wrong, would you really care what two other consenting adults do in a room? Would you really care if there was like a historic sexual revolution and people who had felt repressed, you know, mostly by the church, to be honest, you know, all of a sudden just found ways to express themselves sexually in ways that they were comfortable with? Like, would that really be a thing that you lose sleep over? Ask yourself this question. Is it a thing you lose sleep over now? Do you really give a shit what other people do in the privacy of their bedrooms?
if we're going to be free, we women certainly can't be victimized by men. Men can jump in and out of bed with anybody they want all day long and walk away, and there aren't any consequences to them. But what happens to us is we get pregnant. And so their freedom has no impingement. Their freedom has no consequence. Their freedom has no detrimental results. But our freedom does. So in order for us to be really free, you've got to eliminate the consequence, the major consequence.
All right. And I'm going to have to dispel this myth right now, because this shit does irritate me. This whole idea that as a man, there are no... Let me tell you, as a sexy man that just... Not right now. I'm making a YouTube video. But we want to get... Not right now. I'm making a YouTube video. Pocket, we just want to see you. We just want to see you. Not right now. I'm busy. God damn. I can't keep them off me, folks. It's the robe. It's the robe. I'll be honest with you. It's the robe. But anyway, there are consequences for men. It's not like, oh, I could just lay down with anything, bust it up, and there's no... Like, come on. Are you serious, dog? Like, if you lay down with somebody and something happens, like, not only is there, potential... emotional, social, reputational consequences. There are health consequences, STIs. There's potential pregnancies, okay? And then if some woman that you don't want to have a child with, even one who, like, quote unquote, forces it on you, do some crazy-ish, pokes a hole in a condom or something, or, lies to you about being on birth control, or just forgets, or, just gets caught up in the moment, and, whatever the case is, right? Or the damn thing breaks. It's never happened to me. All right. So, like, and let's just say you don't want that, right? Like, you don't want it. What happens? Your freedom is on the line. I've had to even break this down for some females. Like, I know females, like, really want to make this about women's issues. What up, Tux? Yeah, man. Tux, we doing late night things, baby. All right, so I had to break this down for some females because, listen, I understand the whole bodily autonomy. You carry the baby, okay? And, it's going to be inside of you and you're going to, I understand all of that. I really, really do. I understand how biology works. Thank you very much. But no, really, respect. But at the same time, understand for me, part of what's at stake that's not at stake even for a female is the potential to lose my freedom. Did I say what? What? Yes, freedom. Right? A man who has a baby and doesn't want to take care of it because he made a choice. Like, I don't want that baby. But she decides, right? Well, it's my body, my bodily autonomy. So she keeps it. And he dips like, all right, fine. It's your choice. You take care of it. No. He has the potential to face legal consequences and go to jail. So that's another thing that, where am I going with that? It's a way that if we reframe the issue a little bit, we would all be on board with it because we have to realize that this is an attack on all of our reproductive rights. And so I have to deal with that situation as a man, no matter who I lay down with, whatever the situation is, right? But now on top of that, we're adding the level of taking that choice away from us, such that me and a female can't even make that choice on our own. But my point is like, when they shut down the abortion rights, it's not just women who lose their reproductive rights. We all do.
Free sex, free love, and that is you've got to be able to eliminate pregnancy. Otherwise, we become victimized by men, and we don't want to be victimized by men. So the sexual revolution with its free love really set the stage for the massacring of millions of babies who were nothing but an intrusion in the fornications and the adulteries of a wretched, degenerate society. Then there was a second thing that jumped onto the bandwagon, apart from this whole free love thing, and that was the deformities issue. And you all remember back in the 60s, the big issue about thalidomide. Many women took thalidomide. You also remember that thalidomide had some severe side effects in terms of limbless children that were born. And there were some medical doctors in England who believed that these deformities and other deformities were serious enough to lead them to argue for eugenic abortions. And that, of course, came out of England, as I said, eliminating birth defect children because of the cost on society, because of the trouble they give to parents. They're difficult to deal with. They have all kinds of problems with these children. So we ought to come along and say, look, there's no
very interesting too, because they go here to like the birth defects and the deformities and the eugenics and all of that. And it's like, wait a second. Y'all are against that too, right? Like they're against sort of usually like stem cell research and genetic engineering and all of the other things we would actually need to do to combat some of those things through science and technology. And so that'll be sort of a recurring theme, I'm sure, as we get through this, is that they're always bringing up all these extra issues and problems, but then they're not willing to do the things that we would actually need to do to address them, even to the extent that they would reduce the need for abortions. So it's just all over the place.
And bringing deformed children into the world. It's a tough enough place anyway. And so they jumped on the bandwagon for their agenda's sake and mounted,
Tux,
as it
that's
were,
the
more
theme. It's supposed to be the
abortion.
biblical view of abortion, but he hasn't said
and then
pretty much
along
dick about the Bible.
The whole feminist movement. And the feminist movement took the expression of sexual freedom one step beyond. And they basically said, we not only want to be sexually free without consequence, but we want to be able to put on our blue suit and take our briefcase and go to work every day too. We want to compete in a man's world as equals. And if we have to have babies,
it's crazy. I don't know. I'm waiting for the biblical part too. Like,
can't do that.
I'll even pull
Women
up the
are not
scriptures
equal,
just to give us something else
said,
to
and
look
I'm quoting,
at if he
to
pulls
men,
them up.
unless they are rid of childbearing responsibilities. Betty Friedan, who was a leader of the feminist movement, said, quote, women must have abortion.
He's literally quoting feminist scholars before the Bible.
As a backup to contraceptive failure. Contraception first, and if it doesn't work, then abortion, because we can't be bothering with children. We got to go to work and make our way in a man's world. So you had the sexual revolution compounded by this sort of genetic game playing from those people who wanted to eliminate the deformed from society, and adding to that compound problem is the third feature, which is the feminist argument that if we're going to work in a man's world and be equal to men in every way, we can't be fussing around at home with kids, so we got to eliminate them from our lives. Then you had another component. Another piece came into the platform from the population control advocates who were telling us that we were all going to be standing on each other's head if we kept having babies. But we're all going to be crushing each other out of existence because the world was going to be overpopulated. And I read all of that. Don't you remember reading that in the 60s? Everyone was screaming about overpopulation.
The world is overpopulated.
I remember finding an old book that was
him?
written in 1918 in which a man had said, if something doesn't change, we have too many horses in the streets of Chicago, and at the projected rate it's going right now, in another 25 years, the city of Chicago will be 18 foot deep in manure. It's the same kind of reasoning. We're all going to drown in a sea of babies. And all of this fed the building of this platform. It was all material fed into this building project to build the platform upon which the Roe versus Wade legal verdict came down in January 1973. And at that point, the Supreme Court of the United States excluded unborn children from the protection of the 14th Amendment, which says no person shall be deprived of life without due process of law. And they said, unborn children aren't persons. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And we'll see that in a minute.
According to many definitions, they're actually not. So, very interesting that he went there. All right, folks, we're going to take a very brief musical interlude. Since we don't have any sponsors for today's show, we use this as an opportunity to encourage people to donate to the show by singing our offering song. If you're happy, put your money in the plate. If you're happy, put your money in the plate. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it. If you're happy, put your money in the plate. If you're happy, put your money in the plate. If you're happy, put your money in the plate. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it. If you're happy, put your money in the plate. All right, I want to thank the worship team for that great performance. Thank you guys. You guys been working hard on that all week. Really appreciate you.
One of the professors at the Master's College, Dr. John Pilkey, very astute, teaches in our English Lit department, wrote me a little memo. Listen to what it says. The phrase pro-choice, which is what the pro-abortionists use, the phrase pro-choice strikes me as one of the most depraved, apocalyptically wicked rhetorical facts in the history of Western civilization in the Christian era. The phrase means pro-sin, or free to choose sin. The phrase would actually be less dreadful if it were pro-abortion, because that would confine it to the sphere of a particular moral problem. But by turning it to what seems a euphemism, the pro-choice people have wrung the final return.
But bro, this is what I mean by just like not even trying. Because obviously when you call your side pro-life, you then immediately insinuate that the other side is pro-death. So if you have the audacity to criticize them for calling themselves pro-choice because of the impressions that it might set, like, get out of here.
Rhetorical death knell to the entire democratic experiment. The phrase pro-choice means without conscience, or without inhibition, or without restraint.
Here, man, let the people know what you think.
And it parades itself under the Jeffersonian banner of liberty of conscience and separation of church and state. As a rhetorical gesture, perfectly designed to function as a political banner, this phrase constitutes the last word, the official formulation of official apostate defiance against the God of Christianity. Then he said, I'm confident that God will answer it apocalyptically. Yes, I believe he's right. I believe abortion is the last official stand of the defiant apostate against God. It says, God, you will not determine who lives or dies, I will. The ultimate apostasy. That's where we are in our culture. And we're there by law. The law of our own government. The court ignored the issue of when life begins, which is a medical scientific issue. Even though criminals have been successfully prosecuted for killing unborn children in an attack on a pregnant mother, that child is considered a non-person if its own mother does.
If it's a medical scientific issue, could the court have been potentially doing the right thing in not addressing it?
Decides to kill it. If a criminal kills it, they're prosecuted. If the mother kills it, it's a non-person. As far as I can tell, and my research may not be exhaustive, but as far as I can tell, there is no nation on the face of the earth.
Dude, this is like so obvious. I'm serious, Christians. If you gather around, if you don't understand this. Yes, when the mother kills it, it's her choice. She's deciding she no longer wants to be pregnant, right? Okay, cool. Baby's not considered a person yet because the baby's not an individual. As you said, that the baby is dependent on the mother. Not having reached the individual status is why many deny the baby personhood status. You want to know who's undisputedly a person 24/7, 365, 1000%? You guessed it, the mother. All right, cool. So that person decides she doesn't want to carry this burgeoning person any longer. Okay. Now, if somebody else does it, a stranger, an outsider, a kick to the gut, so to speak, from a bandit of some sort, you know, a bandit, like Jesus. Anyway, kick to the gut from a bandit, a real bandit, real bad guy, right? That's different. Yes, it's different because it wasn't the choice of the person. The termination was a result of an assault by another. You got it.
With a more permissive abortion policy than the United States, with the single exception of China. It is reflective of...
Ladies and gentlemen, we have our first guest here on Late-Night Counter-Apologetics, and it is none other than the main man, Tux himself, future co-host of No Good and Evil. How you doing tonight? Let me make sure I got enough volume for you.
Maybe my might be a little turned down.
Yeah, turn it up.
It's the wrong way. How about there?
All right, here you go. All right, I don't know if you caught the earlier part, but I'm trying to sell people on the idea that the reason I talk about the politics is they talk about the politics.
That is why. Ironic.
Like, this is supposed to be on the biblical view of abortion, and it's been all politics and history and world cultures, but very little scripture.
I haven't heard any scripture, just as you said. And that they quoted, you pointed out that they pointed that he's just good, doing some good preaching to the people already converted. So, you were in the middle of a point. I just wanted to say, all I got was belly button land I know this because I have a warm, fuzzy feeling deep down inside.
No, I wasn't. I'm good. I made my point.
I'm not a huge fan of talking about abortion. I think the best mic drop that you can have on abortion is it should be basically decided between somebody who's been trained by medical science, who's advising the situation, and whoever is facing the consequences of their decision. Generally speaking, the female who has had a little naughty and now has to choose whether they have the child or not provide the life support for that to become a child. End of list. You don't need anybody else. Doesn't need politicians battling it over. It doesn't require a preacher at the pulpit. It doesn't require somebody demanding what God says is going to be.
What up? Shit. Hey, what you doing with that coat on your head, though, man?
Cheers. Oh, this is the birthday bash. We're throwing a birthday party for all the unborn babies.
How old is you wearing all that shit, man?
Nah, it's not for me. It's for the unborn babies that we've saved with the change in the Supreme Court. So it's a birthday. So I'm wearing the cone. It's a birthday. This Jewish space laser has on a birthday hat.
Okay. Hey, I'm not too familiar with like politics and shit. Could you like lace me up real quick with what happened?
Oh, so they I don't know. They're gonna overturn Roe vs. Wade, and so
I don't
women.
know. I heard that, but I don't know what is that though.
All right, so it means women will no longer have I guess basically the right to an abortion will no longer be federally protected. So it'll go back to being a state-by-state thing.
Hey, I'm cool with that, yeah.
You're cool?
I don't agree with fucking abortions, dog.
All right, so why do you think they should? Why do you not agree with them?
Because, dude, like, imagine you getting aborted, motherfucker. You wouldn't.
I mean, I'd be fine with that, right? I wouldn't know if I got aborted.
I know, dude, exactly. But like, imagine. Do you believe in reincarnation or what? Like,
no.
Right. So if you get aborted, that's you, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's a very like.
That's just my stance. That's how I feel. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's a reasonable stance on it, right? Like we are all sort of like, I think part of a consequence of being alive is on some level, like not wanting to die, right? Like you've just got so much like survival instinct built into you, right? So I think the idea that like, holy crap, if this person made this decision all those years ago, like I would never exist, is a pretty scary thought, right? My thought on the issue is that we don't help anybody by making it a criminal thing. I don't think it's a thing that people want to do. And so like many other things in life that I think are a very tough choice to make, but ultimately some people feel they have to make that choice. I think they should be able to make it like Tux was saying, sort of in conjunction with a medical doctor and, as a result of sort of thinking it over. I don't think the government should decide whether or not they do it. Ultimately, I'm with you in the idea that I would love to live in a world where they weren't necessary. So I got a really bad grade one time in high school for writing about this in a class, which apparently the teacher, this was like the one subject you weren't supposed to write about, and I wasn't in class when he said that. Yeah.
Wait, was this like an unwritten rule or what?
Yeah, no, he said that he said it. He said it, and I guess I wasn't there when he said it because I certainly would have
specifically said just don't.
Yeah. I certainly would have wrote about something else.
That's funny.
But but basically, like my conclusion there was that like this isn't a thing anybody ever wants. Like even this preacher, like when he goes into details about like what the process is like and what some of the difficult outcomes are like for people that have to go through this and what the consequences might be down the road. I mean, it's very clear that this isn't a thing that people take lightly. I think at least most people in, reasonable mental health take lightly. And so, yeah, the thing that I think bugs me the most about that is even things like when you look at people who are pro-life, a lot of times they're very much like, oh, well, you should just have the baby adopted. But like, they don't
what's the
really
contrary
adopt.
to that, man? Like, well, how do you feel like how that's a bad idea for every baby? Like, yeah, when should a baby be aborted? Like, what's the line?
I honestly, I don't think I know.
Like a rape, I've heard other people say like a rape victim, like, okay, if that person like didn't want to have that baby, I can kind of see why, like shit like that. But
Yeah, I mean, I think to be honest, for me, like, I support sort of this is going to sound weird, but in some sense, an unconditional right to do it. I think it's a medical thing, right? And so I don't think it's for me to decide when it is or isn't the best choice for somebody. I do think that I think about it from sort of a biological perspective. I think it's something, again, that's ubiquitous throughout nature. So it's something that just you see abortive behavior in many, many animals. And so I don't think, quote unquote, no abortions is the norm, right? I think the norm is abortions and unfortunately lots of them. And so it's weird to me that we've come to this place where as people, we like think the world would somehow magically be a better place if this practice didn't exist. And to me, that's like beautiful in a sort of like, yeah, we should of course like try to make life better. And I would love, but I think that the solution there is like, we have to figure out a way to make a world in which people just don't want to have them. And I think there are maybe ways you can do that. But even if we did that, even if we lived in this world where there was like no good reason, quote unquote, to have an abortion, I still think people should have the right to have them.
Just like for human rights, right? Just like for the
exactly, just for like right. That's a human right, and I don't know enough to say when you shouldn't be able to exercise that right.
Maybe the way I feel is more personal. Like if I were to have a girlfriend, for instance, that wanted to have one and it was mine, then I would feel that type of way. But other people's, that's their decision.
What about if? Go ahead.
BJ, I would suggest that the person who's, for instance, to cast my mind back to the court case over Terry Schiavo, if you remember that. Remember, she was somebody who had gone into a coma and was on life support for around 10 to 12
and
years.
One of the nurses. Yeah.
And basically that there was, the Christian coalition was essentially saying, hey, Terry Schiavo is alive. There is you can't grant the divorce. You can't let the person who is married to her just say unplug her, et cetera, et cetera.
Fucking
when it came back, that she was brain dead, she definitely was brain dead at the autopsy. Where do you decide till death do us part? Is brain dead enough for death to do us part, et cetera, et cetera? And it's the same thing with a life support system that's providing that person to be alive. If the medical science wasn't there for her to be on some sort of heart pumping machine or some sort of lung functioning machine, then she wouldn't be alive. She would be dead. Her bodily function was not available to her from her own mind. And it's going to be the same thing with an unborn child or a fetus. They don't have the capability of breathing on their own. They don't have the capability of lung function or cardio function or even mental capacities to use to be a child. And to say that the court system or the judicial, the branches of government that should be the ones making these types of laws shouldn't really be making those types of laws except for medical professionals who have been trained in it. have 10,000 hours invested in it.
Hey, D-High, is you still drinking that fucking, what's that shit? That grain alcohol? What's that called, man?
Do I know you?
Bro, you followed me in here, obviously. Like, you fucking, it happens, dude. That's why I fucking addressed you as soon as you came in here, dude. What the fuck are you doing?
Oh,
I'm not saying you're not welcome. It's just
I don't think I've been to this show before.
No,
Nah,
this is
the
dude,
first
it's
time.
funny because this is both of our first times. So that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. You followed me in here, bro. Like, for real.
No, I think he's just messing with you. What up, D-High? What do you want to? What do you want to
'cause
say?
I know him. Well, yeah, he just fucking with me. Yeah. Fuck you guys for that.
I don't even know what this show is about. I just found it.
Well, now it's about you.
It's about what do you think about abortion? So it's about men talking about
Is
abortion.
that what you are
Yeah, do
talking
you
about?
think maybe you should have been
Yeah.
aborted, D-Highs? Because maybe I'm getting more agreeable with abortions, thinking that at that factor, right? It's just
All right, well that's progress.
Okay.
But D-High, did you come on? You had something you wanted to say?
This is the first, I think, StreamYard that I saw.
Oh, so yeah, it's just you can come on, and normally people who come on have
Yeah,
something.
I was looking for a room to join because
okay. Well, he asked you a question and you still haven't answered it though, right? So
what's up with this guy attacking me?
It's all right.
not attacking.
It's
dude.
all right. But yeah, what do you think about? Do you have a take on abortion?
No.
No. All right. Well,
He doesn't want
maybe
to
come back
talk,
if you want to say something about what we're talking
No,
about.
let him over. Yeah, wait. Come on, bro. Give your honest opinion, Diaz. For real. I think you're trolling or some shit. I think you're tripping, bro.
I don't know what to say about abortion.
Do you agree? Yes or no? It's a yes or no question at the end of the day.
I
Maybe a why or why not.
What am I supposed to be making a comment, like being put on the spot?
I mean, you joined the stream. That's what we're
Maybe.
talking
I have
about.
no idea about
I
abortion.
say I'm
Like, I
against
don't know
it.
what
I
you
feel
think
like
about abortion. I've never put any thought into it.
So there's like
It's
different.
none of my
sides of the
business.
fucking
Like, I'm
conversation.
not a fucking. Like, all right.
It's a debate. It doesn't give it.
All right. Well,
Who gives
all
a
right.
fuck?
Look, I had a girlfriend, and she happened to do it, and I saw the fetus, and I don't want to talk about it. How about that?
You didn't see no.
All right,
fetus, you lying. I'm gonna call you.
I
that.
appreciate that.
But yeah, say what you want to do.
No, I really did.
How big was it? Size your like thumb or something? Bro, you didn't see no fucking fetus, bro. You lying.
I swear on everything. Swear on my parents' life.
All right. So how do you feel about it after the fact? Do you feel like because
Okay, so like I don't want to talk about it.
all right,
Oh, like
all right.
it's home. Yeah.
Do you
know
mind
what?
hopping out the stream?
Why?
Well, come
Because I
on,
wanna
D-Highs,
talk about,
just say what
like,
you.
abortion.
That's
Yes, because that's the topic of today's
the
show.
topic.
That's the
Come on,
only
yeah, why
topic
else
that you're
would you
having.
be-
Yes,
Not trying
yes. That's the only topic we're talking about today.
Yes, you're kind of confrontational.
All because
No,
I
it's-
don't want to talk
it- that
about
makes for a good
like
show,
some
like,
problem
this.
that I had.
You have problems? We get your letters. Mail it in.
I really wanted to hear what I think I could have got out of him, like what he was trying to talk about, even though he tried to not talk about it. But I probably could have coursed.
It's all right. I don't
I
want to.
think Cameron's onto
That
something.
hard.
I think Cameron's onto something. He's confident.
Yeah,
that if men
so-
got pregnant.
All right, so I'm gonna give you guys the straight truth, right?
Yeah.
This is an awful topic, right? And I think the fortunate thing I benefit from is that like the stream is just starting, so like what? Like you can't really cancel a stream that nobody's watching. But no, seriously, like I've always had this opinion, right? And I say this when these things come up. And for some reason it came up earlier this year too, for some odd reason, like before this. But anyway, both times I happened to be in conversation with female friends, and I said, one thing that gets me when we talk about this is that it's constantly talked about as a woman's issue and an issue with women's bodies and women's rights. And there's very good reason for that, right? Because, like I said, women carry the pregnancy. And so in some way, it's about women's bodies in a way that it's not about men's bodies. And you have to be kind of a dullard on some level to not understand that. But
of course, we can't control a women's body, like whatever they want to do with it. Like I can't control it, right? So.
Right. But on some other level, right, it is about all of our reproductive rights. And it's not as though if women can't get an abortion, I always make this joke, it's not as though a woman can't get an abortion. I can say, oh, you can't get an abortion? Oh, well, don't worry. I'm a man. I can go get the abortion for us. You know, like, it doesn't work like that. If women can't get abortion, nobody can get abortion. And if it was a little bit more talked about on the news, especially even on the left, more about how it's about everybody's reproductive rights and also about women's bodies, I think it'd be easier to build a coalition around that, right? Because to Cameron's point, you know, if you're a man and you get caught up in a situation now and you're in a state where you can't get an abortion and, you know, whatever like that, it is going to take it from you too. And so it's strange that somehow in this like quote unquote male dominated, you know, political situation where, like Cameron said, if this was really men who got pregnant, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's like, well, it's still
it's a gender thing now, right?
Well, it's definitely a gender thing, but it's also like it's still men who won't be able to get abortions. So why is it any different than it would be if men got pregnant? I guess
if it was my baby, though, that's the only reason that it would tie me to it. Other than that, like I said, like, well, a woman could understand that at least, right? Why?
Yeah. I just wanted to say it because it's kind of literally the backstory of this. Like when I told that to people, they were like, "Oh, I don't hear enough men say that." And since they said, yeah, that's what they like. I've had this conversation with a few women, and every time they say, I don't hear enough men say that.
Interesting. And so the men are okay. So you're saying, wow.
And since they said that, I was like, well, I'm gonna do this week's episode on that. Because this is important. This is what's happening right now. And if they're saying not enough men are talking about it, then I'm going to go ahead and be a man who talks about it.
It's not talking right.
And I didn't know any other way. This show is about sarcasm and late night. I didn't know how else to do it, but I was like, oh, let's do a birthday bash for all the unborn babies that the Republicans have just saved. It's tacky and gross, but it's whatever. So, but yeah, like I'm glad we actually did this. I'm glad you guys joined because I think we've actually had a good conversation about this.
Are you filming this?
I'm a college professor, so that's what I do. It's gonna be on your YouTube.
Oh man, I knew it.
Yeah, this would be like
for an experiment. You're gonna play this shit.
This would be like seeing my shit. No, I'm not gonna play this in class.
This is a social experiment right now that you involved me in.
Nah, we're in a community that does this. We talk to people.
Okay, but you have like
different
50
ideas.
subs though. Like, so how many channels do you have? Because obviously you'd be doing
a
this,
couple.
But you only have
I just started.
subs.
I literally just started this like a couple weeks ago. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, man. I'm glad you told us where you were coming from and heard us out. That's super cool.
Really? No, I like every aspect of debates or whatever.
Yeah, man. Definitely follow Tux over there. He'll be doing some of that eventually.
Nice. I'm not. I don't have a channel myself. Well, I do, but I don't put content out. I'm just like a supporter, I guess. Just a StreamYard supporter, more specifically. Anyone that does StreamYards like to just join and just chill.
Yeah, this is our first one with the StreamYard, and it's worked out really well. I like it. I think it's just more inviting, and it's easier for people to just like jump in. And
it's new. It's coming up. Just have a lookout for people when they don't have a camera and then like porn bomb your stream to try to take your stream down. There's assholes that do that.
I've heard. At least the other guy, he had a camera and everything, so I was like, it's all right, we can handle it.
My best advice, if they don't have a camera, either put someone full screen if you're gonna let them on, just to see like what they're about before you just let them right on.
Yeah.
Have some type of level of security with them.
I think I can talk to them usually over here in the backstage area too. So
But you can't hear them though.
yeah,
You
without
can
them
tell them,
without
yeah,
them
just turn on
joining
your
in.
camera real quick
Yeah.
at least, so I can see who you are, just to know you're like a real person. You're not.
Yeah, that's what Bread of Life does over on her channel.
Yeah, no, that's necessary.
All right, so Tux, what do you think about this? When I've heard a number of Christians saying that this is the best news they've ever gotten in their lifetime.
Well, I will. It's the best news they've heard. I mean, this is ordained by God, obviously. This means this is God's will.
Yeah.
It's basically, the boil it down to its ultimate conclusion.
Right.
Me personally, I think there's a movie trailer I've watched. I've never watched the movie itself, but it's basically about a guy who just has sex and babies all over the place. And then the two smart people that are like planning everything out to the infantile moments, and they never actually have kids. The smart ones are the ones that are basically not having kids, and the ones that are just cranking out babies like crazy, whether they're doing it for Jesus or not. Those are the folks that are having a lot of kids. And,
right.
It's a disparity of, if you have one side of the family tree that kind of feels that we're going to plan it we're going to plan every detail, we're not going to have kids until it's the right time, or the ones that just accidentally have kids, you're going to have a mess of kids on one side. And I think it's called idiocity or something like that. Is the trailer. Let's see if that was it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too. Also, there's some stuff too with like, sort of correlations between socioeconomic status, particularly lower socioeconomic status, and having more children, right? Being more rural and having more children. I think of it as too, like, it makes a lot of sense, right? In the sense that children in some deeper sense are really almost like supposed to be your security, right? Later in life, right? Like when you can't take care of yourself, typically it's like you got to have children, right? Or else, right, there isn't going to be anybody to take care of you. And then if you're falling on hard times, it's less likely that your children will successfully reach reproductive age themselves. And so while for a lot of us, that's like you have fewer kids and, you invest it all. But for a lot of people, it's like you have more kids. And then just by chance, some of them will be around when you need them.
I have some kids. I'm actually step-parent to those kids, so
Okay.
I have not created a personal seed legacy, so to speak, in my life, in my lifetime. So
Yeah, I'm kind of just, I don't know if it's in the cards for me or not. So I'm kind of trying to get comfortable with the idea that it might not be.
yeah.
And like just let it be like what it is. Like I'm not too worried about it. I just think it's for me it feels like being reasonable. Go ahead.
Can we get a woman in here to talk about some of this stuff?
I would love that. I don't think there's any in the audience. I don't think there's anybody watching. That would have been ideal. I should have asked a friend to come on or something. I should have asked somebody to stay up with me. Problem is, it's like I didn't start this till like 2:30 my time or something. So I would have had to have a female friend willing to stay up to the middle of the night to appear on my burgeoning podcast for God knows how many viewers.
Yeah.
The dozens and dozens of fans.
Yeah, I definitely felt a little icky talking about something.
No,
That
I
is
do
none
too.
of my
I
business.
totally do too. And I was just like, you know what? Why not? If that's the issue, if that's the problem, is like we don't. And hey, I think that's part of it too that should be brought to light, right? Some of it's not that us men don't care. It's that we don't know what to say, or we feel like it is a woman's issue. That's kind of why I wanted to say that, right? Because if they were doing more of, yes, it's about women's bodies, but it's about everybody's reproductive rights. So men, we need your help, right? The same way we did with race, right? You probably feel icky talking about race as a white dude to some extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we've done a really good job of saying like, hey, we need to have these conversations about race. Like there's all these issues. You as a white person, you can help out a lot. You should read some books. You should go to group. You should interview a black person. Like we tried to come up with all these ways to say, we know you feel like you're the other side of this, but we can't make progress without you. So jump in the conversation. And those of us that take your participation in good faith, no, it might be a little awkward or bumpy along the way, but we're happy to have you, right? And I feel sometimes with abortion, even on the pro-choice side or the liberal side of things, we haven't always done a good job of that. Because I've had like those conversations I've had with women where they've said, oh, I haven't heard a lot of men say that. That came as a surprise to me because I've had other women say, shut the fuck up. You're a man, you shouldn't be talking about this or whatever, right? Or this is about women's bodies, blah, 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 right? And that's very discouraging because I'm not trying to say it's not about women's bodies. I'm just trying to say, yo, I'm trying to get a coalition behind y'all because it affects everybody. And so I think if we did a better job of that, it would be easier for us to talk about it as men and say, hey, I don't always know what to say, or I don't feel like I have as much at stake in particular ways as a woman does, but I'm willing to have the conversation if it's helpful.
Helpful.
You know?
Yeah. We can all have the best of intentions.
Yeah.
I fall short probably when it comes to everything else.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I could. Yeah, exactly. I can like try to have a good heart, and that's kind of the thing too. Like, to speak to where I was trying to go with this. Well, one, I was hoping MacArthur would at least get into some Bible stuff, but I heard David Pakman. He's like a liberal news commentator talking about this earlier this week, and he was saying like you have to understand for these people that this is something to celebrate for them. If you really genuinely believe that abortion is murdering babies, then this is like a really great thing and it's really something to celebrate. And when you hear them say things like, this is the best news I've ever gotten in my life, or they're crying, or they've been like, oh, this is what it's all about, you got to try to understand that. And just like when I go into, oh, I'm going to counter-apologize some preacher, you know, like we did, Joel Osteen, Victory Begins in the Dark, right? To jump into that, we're like learning. We're here for Joel Osteen to teach us about how victory begins in the dark. And the fun is to listen to them and to some extent go along with it, right? So you can hear them in a way that it's funny, but it's like, okay, no, I actually do see where they're coming from. So that was about, you got to be faithful and praise the Lord in advance and all of this stuff about how God's plan is at work when you're in your season of darkness. Okay, and then I did Marjorie Taylor Greene and her like insurrectionist fucking nonsense, right? And that was called, I can't recall because that's what you kept saying, right? But I brought out the JFK tights and did the whole QAnon thing, right? Because that's, she was being applauded. She was being celebrated for her role in that whole thing, and then getting up on the stand and lying about it so that she could stay on the ballot, right? So you jump into that like, oh yeah, no, let's represent QAnon. Like we up in here, JFK's coming back to Dallas. Y'all ain't heard? Because that's what you do. And so with this, it was like, well, what do you do with it? Oh, well, they just saved a whole generation of babies that's going to be born now. So let's happy birthday to all the unborn babies. Because that's how you would feel if you were one of these people, right? Think about it. This is where they're coming from. To them, this is celebrating as a whole generation. Right? And that's what he talked about. He talked about, oh my God, there's mass murder, and it would put Hitler to shame because there are more babies being aborted now than there are being born now. So to them, this is a celebration of all those would-be unborn babies who are now going to be born. And yeah, it's ridiculous to throw a birthday party for unborn babies, but it does, some sense, point to exactly what they're celebrating, right? In some weird way, it's like right on the nose. It's like, that's what they're doing.
So to look at this in a non-Christian perspective.
Sure. That's relevant.
When, with our Constitution, at what point are you and I entitled or in receivership of our inalienable rights?
You just mean like at what point? I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know that there's such a thing. Like, I think that that's a very powerful construct for us. But I think what this highlights is your rights are only those which you're willing to secure by one means or another.
Well, there's an argument that this can be a non-religious situation in which you're entitled to, as an American citizen, to be a Constitution. At what point do those rights start? Is it after you've taken your first breath? Is it when you have a heartbeat? When you have the capacity for trimester?
I think you're
protection
breaking up. Try to stop your camera for a second. All right, go ahead and talk. Talk with your... All right, go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yeah, it's better.
I need to do a refresh on StreamYard.
So you're talking about when is it become when do you inherit those rights? Yeah, honestly, I think that there's certain things that I wouldn't try to get around if we were being serious. Mm-hmm. And one of them is that you are talking about something that's alive, a fetus, and it is human. And if you want to genuinely grant it the status of an individual, say at the moment of conception, then I don't think you're being unreasonable in then wanting to give it constitutional rights and saying that it is entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and you cannot deprive it of that by aborting it. I actually think that that's a wholeheartedly reasonable argument. I don't think that argument... I'm not concerned about it having its full rights until it's an individual. That's just my take on it. I don't think it's right or wrong. I don't think I'm right about that. It's just my take on it. And I also don't think the rights of that fetus supersede the rights of the mother. So, but I do think to what you're asking that there's a certain consistency, to your point about when do you get those rights, that I think they're being reasonable, to be honest, in that regard.
Yeah, I somewhat do also, but I also think that the inalienable rights go to the mother as the
right. That's me. That's me. And the scales, to me, I guess I could put it this way: no matter what the situation is, to me, and again, I could be wrong, and I'm willing to be convinced I'm wrong, but to me, there's no situation I can imagine in which the scales don't always lean towards the mother. Like, I cannot imagine the baby putting more weight on the scale than the mother. And I guess that's the hard part for me.
Yeah, to me, it goes to the who gets to make the decision, the life support system. That if it's a baby for Jesus, Jesus is supposed to be the one who decides, not the mother. And
Right.
I disagree with that portion of it, since there might not even be a Jesus.
He brought that up, and I thought that was very, very interesting, because I think a lot of times, he threw out murder a lot. Like, he just jumped straight into, like, we're going to talk about murdering babies, which is fine. But, to play this sort of Pine Creek game, he'd always be like, well, why? Well, why is that bad, right? Sort of, who cares, right? And the one thing he went to that I think is almost, in some sense, deeper than the commandment to not murder is this idea that God is the one who gets to be, to your point, the arbiter of life and death. And that really what you're doing wrong when you abort a fetus is that you are making that decision in God's stead. And I think that's what you're kind of getting at. And it was interesting that he went there in a way that I think almost suggested as though, I don't know, I don't want to say it either supersedes or is the ultimate why the thou shalt not murder is there. It's not that the act of stabbing somebody in the neck till they no longer can breathe is inherently bad, right? It's that you're not allowed to make that judgment on the behalf of another human life.
Well, it just comes down to, Jay, do you love you some Jesus? Loves you some Jesus. Don't be murdering his babies.
Yeah, pretty much, honestly. Like, I'm good. It's been like an hour, like 45. Like, I'm good. I don't need to get through the rest of this. Honestly, like the main point that I wanted to bring up that I promised, I don't know if you'll go back and check out the beginning, but I promised at the beginning that I would deliver a radical take on like this issue, on like where I really stand on this issue. The type of thing that just gonna make your ears burn off, get us canceled type stuff, okay? So I'm ready to do that now. I'm ready for the big reveal, okay?
I'm there with you. You want me to jump off then?
No, you can stay on.
Okay.
Well, you can stay on. You're fine. You're part of my team. You're officially part of the clique. You're allowed to just jump in and co-host with me. And also, I want to keep it flexible, right? Like Doug does when you do like the, sermons like these. Like, you don't have to get through the whole thing. I got through half of it, and a man said nothing about the Bible. So I think that makes that case.
I don't think the Bible's actually in favor of abortion. I don't think. I just think the Christian Coalition, sometime during the late 60s and 70s just kind of rallied behind it as, this is the hill we're going to die on.
Yeah, I'm honestly with you. When he was talking about all of the issues, I kept feeling that way. Like, this is just a rationale for why Christians should be the most compassionate, concerned, like merciful people in this field. And I want to say something real quickly. I can almost guarantee you there's a lot of Christians who are. And I just want to say that. I don't want to cast it in this light of like, oh, well, all Christians are pro-life and they're all... Because I was a pro-choice Christian and I took my faith very seriously. And that's how I saw it. To be honest, my view on this hasn't changed between being a believer and a non-believer. When I was a believer, I thought it'd be great if we lived in the world someday where that didn't happen. But that I knew that was wishful thinking. I knew that was just sort of, be great if we lived in a world where there was no poverty. It'd be great if we lived in a world where there was no suffering. It'd be great if we lived in a world where everybody could read and write, on and on and on. But we've never lived in that world. And so I've never thought that it should be a crime. And it just horrifies me that in 2022 we're even having this conversation. Like I never, even just a few weeks ago, I never thought I'd do an episode of Late-Night Counter-Apologetics about abortion. It just didn't occur to me that it was about to happen for real, for real.
I never wanted to in the first place.
Yeah, I definitely would never want to do this. But yeah, sorry. So here's my take that kind of I think I thought about over a while that I think would be hard for a Christian to hear, but I think is kind of what I'd want them to think about. So all right, so here it goes. I feel like my inner Pine Creek is coming out. Okay, so here's the take. I don't care that much about unborn babies. I just don't. This whole thing about you're murdering all the unborn babies by the millions, the gazillions, and there's more killed than born. I honestly don't care.
Yeah, until I'm the girl sitting scared or just, fully prepared to, end a pregnancy. I don't think I care about unborn babies either.
Well, thank you for being willing to get canceled with me as we make this bold confession that we don't care about these humans that have yet to exist. But ultimately, and even in the situation you described, and this is what I was hoping to make clear to our guests, and I want to thank them so much for coming, both of them, whether they knew what we were talking about or the protocol for this or not. But anytime I'm in that situation, again, I just care so much more about that young lady. Whether she's ready to end the pregnancy, not ready to end the pregnancy, whatever she's going through, that's the first concern. Next concern, honestly, would be the other parent, right? Would be my desire to be consistent and think that, I wish we lived in the world where men had more say in family planning. And this is not new for me. Even when I was really into politics, I used to talk about male reproductive rights because I just knew a lot of guys, right? I knew a lot of guys who, let's say, got that sort of bad deadbeat dad rap. And I thought that was harsh, especially on particular young black men who I knew had got that, and they were in and out of court about stuff. And in some of those cases, they really were trying their best. And sometimes the mother was out of shape, so to speak. But I noticed that the court system was so heavily geared towards the mother. It was like she could literally be strung out on drugs or whatever, and the dad could be doing everything he could. But it's really hard to get a outcome favorable to the dad. So similarly in this, I think it's important in terms of, wanting children to be born. I'm one of those kids who's lucky enough to know that my dad wanted me, right? And it makes a huge difference in your life. It really does. So yeah, so I always think it's good for dads to talk about and think about that perspective. But I think that's it. The other thing is, I think if you are super confident that this is wrong and you really are not okay with abortions, then to me, we need to do more for people who there's just unfortunately a lot of stuff that they are going through, whether that's providing more resources to reproductive services, adoption, education, Social Security programs, Medicare for all. I mean, if you really want us to live in a world where no one's aborted, we need to live in a world where children are going to be okay. And I'm not saying that if we lived in a world where all those things were in no place, again, if we lived in a world where all of those things were possible and there was no good reason to have an abortion, I'd still think I'd still unquestionably support the legal right to have one. But I think we can all probably agree that it would help. And I think there's enough comparative culture evidence, if you look at societies that have more of those supports in place, I think there's probably some good evidence there to suggest that it's worth doing. So yeah, I think we're good on that. We've done it. We've celebrated the birthday of this event. I think we got the point. We really did see that the scriptural view is based on this. Honestly, I'm gonna be 100. I'm gonna try to keep it reasonable. We try to listen charitably. We come in the spirit of fellowship, regardless of your background or your stance. And I think, to be honest, I don't think there was a need to dive any deeper than that. I think for most believers, how most of them understand the Bible, it is enough to know that there's a command against murdering. It is enough to be committed to the idea that life begins at conception. It is enough to believe that those inalienable constitutional rights then apply to you at that stage. And it's enough to believe that you as a human being do not have the right to arbitrate in matters of life and death with regard to another human being. So, I think I've mentioned some points of disagreement and been clear about my stance on it. But I'm happy to say that I do understand where these people are coming from. I recognize the consistency in their stance, in their view. I disagree. And I hope that people see how deeply they tie their political stances to their expression of their faith, and how motivating it is for them in the political sphere, such that if you agree with me and think that they're wrong, that you sort of understand that we are in a historical call to action, because I think these people are happy to execute an American theocratic revolution, and I think they will if left to their own devices. And I want to say one more thing that I think is important to mention. And I got to confess this because I'm a lefty. I'm way over there. I'm actually not a lefty. I actually think I'm pretty conservative, but given the policies and the things that I support, I know they're considered like really, liberal. So I don't push back on it. But I just got to say this. This is a huge victory for Donald Trump. And if you didn't think Donald Trump was seriously in good shape for 2024, if that man is not in jail in 2024, this is unbelievable Donald J. Trump victory. He promised from day one he would only nominate pro-life Supreme Court justices. He did so aggressively, literally down to the wire, down to the Amy Coney Barrett wire. And he got him in unapologetically. And then this, which many conservatives and right-wingers are calling literally the greatest victory that they have seen in their lifetime. And all they got to say is imagine what he'll do if he takes back the White House in 2024. So, scares me. Hope it scares you too. I'm going to call it. Tux, you can hang out for a sec. I'm going to end the stream. And then I tried this with Nathan. You can kind of hang out. I can end the stream. And then we can say goodnight to each other off air. Want to thank the people that watched live. Want to thank the people that came through and made comments. Want to thank our first guest. Really love this. I think switching over to StreamYard just made it inviting, and I'm happy with that. Love doing this. This is super fun. This was an unbelievably uncomfortable and awkward topic. If you skip this video and you don't want to watch it, I will not be offended. But if you hung in there with me, I greatly appreciate it. I promise we'll be on to something else. This is important. I think it's important that we lend our voices to it. I'm sure I said some things that I could have gotten better. If you'd like to, feel free to educate me in the comments or on Discord or reach out by some other means. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a great weekend. In the name of the Darwins, the Dawkins, and the Christopher Hitchens, science bless you. Poof.